What is up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be all about the Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650. This is a bike that I have gotten to ride a couple of times now. The first time was back in 2023 during the press launch for this bike when they launched this bike into the North American market. I was one of the first people in the United States to get to test ride this bike, and if you follow me on Instagram and Facebook, you already know all about that. And you were probably one of the people curious about this video because you're also probably one of the people who asked me how I felt about riding long distance on this motorcycle. Can you do it? Would it be a good road trip bike? That was one of the top questions that y'all asked me after that press ride. And the stars finally aligned. I finally got to go ride the bike again. Last month during Daytona Bike Week, I got to borrow a Super Meteor 650 for 4 days during Bike Week, and I put 360 miles on the bike during that time, loaded down with all of my junk on it. So now that I've finally gotten to ride it, just as an around town cruiser, as well as a road trip bike, I feel like I have a little bit more of an opinion on it, and it's time to finally make a video. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, if y'all don't want to watch this whole review video, because I don't know how long it's going to end up being, the spark notes are, I really enjoyed my time on this bike. I think it is super, super fun. I think it's great for new riders. I think it's great for experienced riders, whether you just want kind of an around town cruiser, or maybe just want a smaller bike to put around on. It's good for both. It's also great for road trips. It really just depends what you need and want in a motorcycle. But for a bike that's $6,999 MSRP, I think it is a great deal. And I would totally rip around on one for more than just a day or two or three. But if you want more details and maybe you're looking for something specific, there are going to be chapters down here at the bottom and you can skip around, or you can watch this whole video all the way through. Totally up to you. Also, if you want to see a written version of this video, I do have a blog about this bike on my website. It's ridetofood.com. You can find other motorcycle reviews, gear reviews, parts lists for the motorcycles I actually own over on that website, as well as travel guides if you're looking for a place to take your next road trip. So be sure to check that out. I'll link it up in the cards. Let's just go ahead and kick this video off with some of the key specs. I'm not going to list everything because that gets super boring, but these are the ones that I think are most important for most people. So the Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650 has a 648cc parallel twin engine with a 6-speed transmission. It makes 47 horsepower and 38.5 foot-pounds of torque. Those are rough estimates. I used Google to do the conversions. The seat height is 29.1 inches, which is insanely low. I am very flat-footed on this bike. We'll get into that later. Fuel capacity is 4.1 gallons and gets about 50 to 60 miles per gallon from my experience, doing between 60 and 75 miles per hour on average. That is, again, my experience. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but anyway. And last but not least is going to be the MSRP, which is $6,999. Depending on how you kit this bike out with touring accessories or different paint schemes that are available, you can get into the $8,000, $8,500 range, which is still insane. This is so much motorcycle for that price, and that is something that I absolutely love about the Royal Enfield lineup, is that it is just so affordable compared to other things on the market, especially for what you get. But with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about why I love this bike. Starting out with one of the key things that I think really makes this bike enjoyable, which is the overall handling of this machine. Something that really stuck out to me from the first time I rode this motorcycle was the way that it balances and handles. 20 minutes on this bike, and I'm already having a ton of fun on it. And it really inspires confidence. I mean, it's so nimble. The suspension's actually really great. It sounds great. Very, very easy to maneuver. From the first time that I picked my feet up, got on the throttle, and took off on the press ride to the last time I got off the bike when it was fully loaded down, is how it handles. There's two words that come to mind anytime I think of the Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650, and those are that it inspires confidence. I think that this bike just balances so well, loaded or unloaded. I think that this bike is just so easy to ride. It is very nimble, it's very easy to maneuver. It doesn't feel top heavy in the slightest, in my opinion. I was just blown away by this bike the first time I rode it. I was very, very impressed. And even this last time I rode it, I was still very impressed. And it was just so fun to ride because it's just so nimble and easy to maneuver. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is this bike's rider triangle. The ergonomics on this bike are pretty comfortable for someone my size. I'm 5'4" with a 30-inch inseam. On longer days, I do notice that my legs feel a little more stretched out. I also notice that, maybe I'd want to be a little closer to my handlebars. I feel that lower back pain here and there. But overall, it fits me pretty well. So if you're someone who, maybe you're looking at this as your first bike and you're looking for something that you don't have to customize a ton to make it fit you, and you're a smaller statured rider, I think you're going to be okay. Additionally, if you are a smaller statured rider, this bike does have a 29.1 inch seat height, like I mentioned previously. So if you're maybe concerned about being able to put your feet on the ground, or maybe you are older, I've had a lot of people who are older and they're just looking for a smaller bike that is easier to maneuver and push around, I think that you're going to feel very confident on this bike because you are going to be able to reach the ground on it. So that is another nice thing. So as far as speed and power go, this is a topic that y'all had a lot of questions on, and it's probably because y'all see me ride bikes that typically are much larger and much more powerful than the Super Meteor 650. So when I first went to this press ride back in 2023, this was actually the smallest motorcycle I had ever ridden and the least powerful. So I also had those same questions, which I think are very valid. This bike has 47 horsepower and 38.5 foot-pounds of torque, and all things considered, that is not a lot compared to most bikes I ride, but it is enough for someone who's, looking to do some interstate riding, looking to do some backroads riding. You're gonna have plenty of power on this bike. In fact, I'm just gonna leave this clip right here just so that y'all can see just how fast you can get up to speed on the Super Meteor 650. Totally keep up on the highways. I did 75 to 80 on this bike, no problem. And in the event that you need to twist the throttle and get out of a situation, is it going to accelerate the way that a 100 horsepower bike or a bike with tons more torque would? Of course not. But does it have enough to get you out of certain scenarios and or just to pass a vehicle when you need to? Sure. Moving on to technology highlights, there's not a ton to feature here, but there are some pros and cons that I do want to talk about. So the pros are, this is a sub $7,000 motorcycle. There isn't a ton of technology stuff here, which I think is really great. Honestly, I'm just not a big fan of fancy technology and ride modes and big screens on motorcycles. That's just not something I'm really into. This bike does feature an LED headlight, which I do think is great, and I love that you don't have to buy that after the fact. Another nice thing is that the main instrument cluster is pretty simple. I do like that. I kind of wish that it had a tachometer, but it's not the end of the world. The Super Meteor 650 does feature what's called a tripper pod, and it's next to your main instrument cluster. I personally didn't use this. Basically what it does is it's an app that hooks up to your phone, and then you can use it for navigation and just use that little tripper pod. But I would personally rather just put my phone on my handlebars with a phone mount and go on from there. But that is gonna lead me to my first con that I really kind of got frustrated with on this bike, just being so spoiled having this on most motorcycles these days. The Super Meteor 650 does not feature a USB or USB-C port in the neck or near the front of the motorcycle. Now, I've done some digging online and there are some ways to fix this, and there are some aftermarket parts that people have developed so that you can plug something in and power your phone while you're riding. But that was something that I did notice this last time that I got to ride the bike for multiple days, because I brought a phone mount to use for navigation and I didn't have a way to keep my phone charged while I was riding. So every time I got off the bike, I had to constantly plug it into an external battery just to keep it charged on those long days. The other piece of tech that I didn't really like on this bike, and it kind of leads me to my next topic of just general quality and reliability stuff, is the hand controls. I didn't really like how the turn signals felt. I constantly felt like I could not turn them off properly. I would turn it on to, make a left or right turn, and then I'd go to cancel them, and I couldn't get them to cancel. I just ended up turning the turn signal on to go the other way. So I never got used to that. The first time I rode the bike, this last time I rode it, even on day 5 of having it, I was still struggling with the turn signals. So that's something I think, maybe there's some room for improvement there in the future, but overall, not the end of the world, just some things that I think could be done better. With all of that being said, can you tour on the Super Meteor 650? And the short answer is yes. The long answer is it really depends on you as a person and what you really need in a motorcycle. Now, is it really fair, in my opinion, to, compare the Super Meteor 650 to something like a Road Glide or a Street Glide or an Ultra Classic or an Indian Challenger or any of these other big touring bikes? No, not really, because they're kind of in leagues of their own in that sense. This bike is going to be much more meant for around town cruising with the seldom road trip here and there. Would I tour on it and go on a big trip for a week? Sure. Am I going to ride 500 miles a day on the Super Meteor 650? Probably not. But I could do a few days like that and I would be perfectly fine. Now, Royal Enfield does make a touring kit for the Super Meteor 650. It comes with clamshell bags, it comes with a small sissy bar, it comes with a windscreen and a nicer seat. I did get to try all of those things out on this last trip and I did really enjoy the bike set up like that. Each pannier holds about 17.5 liters worth of luggage, or 35 liters combined, which honestly isn't a ton, but depending on the type of road trip you're doing, it's honestly perfectly fine. I was able to put everything I needed for this 4-day trip on the Super Meteor 650. I don't know if I would want the small sissy bar if it was my bike long term. I think I try and look for something maybe aftermarket that is a little bit taller that I can strap a little bit more stuff to, but that's just me. Everyone's touring setup is going to be different, so that's something that you're probably going to have to figure out on your own. Now, as far as overall quality and reliability goes, and that's the last thing I'm going to say in this video, I genuinely don't have any complaints and or concerns about the reliability of this motorcycle. Royal Enfield makes over 1 million motorcycles a year. They're one of the largest motorcycle manufacturers in the world. I think they've got it down and know what they're doing. And I've watched multiple videos now on YouTube about the Super Meteor 650 from people that have had the bike and have put over 10,000 miles on them. And everyone seems to have had great experiences with their bikes. But if reliability is still something that you're concerned about, Royal Enfield is offering a 3-year unlimited mile warranty on this bike, which is one of the best in the industry. So I think that those reviews kind of speak for themselves, and personally, I've enjoyed my time with the Super Meteor 650. I really don't have a lot of complaints, and it is definitely a bike that I could see myself having a lot of fun on, whether it's just, an around town cruise or maybe a couple days riding around camping and road tripping. But I think that's going to do it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have any other questions down in the comments below, and I will see y'all on the road. Later, y'all.
20 minutes on this bike, and I'm already having a ton of fun on it. And it really inspires confidence. I mean, it's so nimble. The suspension's actually really great. It sounds great. Very, very easy to maneuver. And we're doing about 150 miles on this bike, so should be a fun day.
Something else I really like about this bike is all the gauges. Everything's just so clean. I'm very, very impressed with what they've done with this bike, especially for the price.
And it sounds pretty great too.
Now it is time to ride about 60 miles back to Dallas, and I'm going to be taking one of the bikes with the windshield on it back. So we'll see what that's like.
I'm surprised how different it feels despite being that day.
So everyone is already saying that the windshield makes a world of a difference. Y'all know I love me a fairing, so we'll see how it goes.
Now you can totally tell a difference with the windscreen in 2 different ways. One is way more comfortable. Doing 80 on the interstate is super easy. However, you can tell a difference with the power just from the aerodynamics changing with the windscreen on. At 80, it does feel like it's kind of running out of power, and I'm kind of wanting to have a 7th gear almost, but I could push it if needed. But for comfy highway cruising for hours and miles on end, yes, you can totally do 80 mile an hour on this bike, no problem. Honestly, with or without a windshield, that part's totally up to you. But the windshield does make it a lot easier, especially on a windy day like today. We just finished doing 150 miles on these bikes. And I can confidently say that I had way more fun than I was anticipating. I really enjoy this bike. I think that if you are a new rider and you are looking for a brand new bike to gain confidence on, I think this is a great option. I also think that if you are an experienced rider looking for something with a little less power, something simply to cruise around town on or do a little bit of long distance riding, I also think that this bike is fully capable of it.